Hi, everyone, and thank you all for joining us on this very exciting webinar today. Today we'll be discussing design with real-world context, Cesium, and D5 Render in action, where we'll explore seamless integration of real-world context in architectural visualization. So if you don't know me, I'm Jeff Espinoza. I'm a design technology consultant here at D5 Render, and my main role here is to really just spread awareness on D5 Render and talk to users like yourselves on how to best integrate D5 Render into your existing workflows. And joining me here today is Danny Williams from Cesium. So Danny, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me, and welcome, everyone. My name is Danny Williams. I'm the Director of Business Development here at Cesium. I have been at Cesium for just over a year and come from a long background of geospatial and 3D visualization software. I was at Epic Games actually prior to joining Cesium, so fun to be here with D5 that are both using Unreal as well as now the Cesium software with this latest release. So looking forward to the conversation and happy to answer any questions as we get through, as we dig into this. So Jeff, back to you.
Great. Thanks, Danny. So for today's agenda, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, we'll spend a few minutes with Danny where he'll walk us through what is Cesium and how Cesium can help in your current workflows. Then we'll transition to why real-world context matters to designers. And then we'll jump into a quick live demo of Cesium in action with D5 Render. Lastly, we'll just have some closing remarks. We'll take a look at, offering a free trial, as well as answering any questions you might have, whether it be for me, the D5 Render team, or for Danny and the Cesium team. So with that, I'll hand it back to Danny, where he can share his screen and talk a little bit more about Cesium.
Great. All right. Thank you, Jeff. Again, welcome everybody. It's really great to be here to talk more about what D5 is doing with the Cesium toolkit. But we thought we'd kick things off by talking a little bit, providing a little bit of detail about what Cesium is, how our platform is architected, and how companies like D5 and many other of our customers are utilizing our platform for building these types of applications. So just at a very, very high level, this is the Cesium workflow. I'm going to dig into this in a little bit more detail. But the idea behind the Cesium pipeline, the Cesium workflow, is that you, the user, can bring your own data to our platform. We have a server-based software platform that takes your 3D geospatial data and converts it into an open standard called 3D tiles. 3D tiles is a format that we created based off the GLTF data format, but that we've then turned into an open standard. So anybody can get the information about that open standard, build applications that can then ingest 3D tiles. And the goal behind 3D tiles is to be able to efficiently stream this large amount of 3D geospatial data into whatever end application you might want. Again, D5 is a great example of that. Being able to bring in real-world context into their architecture and 3D visualization product to enhance the view for you, the customers. So to go into a little bit more detail around our platform, again, this is the kind of full architecture. I'm going to step through each of these in just a little bit of detail. But the basic idea, again, bringing your data in, converting it into 3D tiles, and then streaming it out to an application of your choosing. So let me just dissect this diagram a little bit and talk about each piece of it in a little bit more detail. We'll start with the Cesium Ion piece. This is our commercial piece of software. It's a software as a service platform. We hosted it in the Amazon cloud. It again allows you to load your 3D data onto the server. That can be any kind of 3D geospatial data. It could be real-world captured data. It can be BIM data, perhaps. Really any 3D content that's geospatial in nature. You can upload that into Cesium Ion. And then as part of the Cesium Ion platform, we have a library of curated 3D content, some of which we've created ourselves at Cesium, and others that we have partnerships with third-party data providers like Google, like Bing, and so on. And so what this allows you to do is to bring your own data into the platform, combine it with worldwide data coverage, again, either from data we've curated or from our third-party partners. and create whatever sort of combined set of data that you want for the visualization that you're interested in building. Once you've done that building of your sets of data, it's all then converted into 3D tiles. Again, this is the open standard that allows you to stream this data very performantly. And so one of the key principles here is that all of this data is very large, it's very complex. When you're getting into architecture visualization, as I'm sure most folks are aware, that can have lots of different data layers. It can have metadata. There's all kinds of very rich, dense content in these types of projects. 3D tiles is designed to be a very performant file format that allows you to very efficiently stream that data from the Cesium Ion platform into whatever your client application is. In terms of client applications, we have 4 free and open source applications that we build that can ingest 3D tiles data. Those are Cesium.js, which is our web browser plugin. We have the Cesium for Unreal plugin, the Cesium for Unity plugin, and the Cesium for Omniverse plugin. So we maintain these 4 products. We Cesium do. We build these. We update them on a regular basis. But again, they are free and open source, so anybody can go download these and use them in their applications. And then, of course, we've got people in our community that are also building their own applications that can ingest 3D tiles. There's a number of different examples of companies that have done that. Because it's an open standard, more and more end users are asking for that support. So even people like Esri are starting to build support for 3D tiles. And then, of course, for the reason that we're all here today, we also now have D5 being able to ingest 3D tiles. So Jeff's certainly going to get into a lot more detail on the workflow here, but the basic idea, the premise behind this is that you can bring your data, our data from Cesium Ion into your D5 environment and combine it with what you're natively rendering in the tool. So jumping on to the next piece here. I'll just briefly mention a little bit of information about how we sell the Cesium Ion license. And a little bit about cost, and then wrap it up and hand it back over to Jeff. So I've talked about Cesium Ion being a SaaS product. We have a version of it that we host in the Amazon cloud. This is the way a number of our customers utilize the Cesium Ion platform. This allows you to upload your data into that environment, have all of that third-party content that I talked about hosted in that environment, and then again, stream all of that data down to whatever your client application is. And this is the use case that will probably be most relevant to most of the folks using D5 in terms of connecting your instance of D5 to a Cesium Ion SaaS instance that we host. We do have another way of providing Cesium Ion. And so for any customers out there that might be interested in an offline use case or an on-premise use case, we have a version of Cesium Ion called self-hosted. And this is essentially where we deliver the full software stack to you for Cesium Ion, and you can then install that on whatever network, whatever hardware you choose to do, maybe on your own private cloud. Any kinds of requirements where security or data sovereignty or anything like that might be important, the Cesium Ion self-hosted approach provides that solution for you. So same functionality, same workflows as I described in the previous slide. 2 different ways that you can set this up depending on what your needs are. In terms of licensing the Cesium Ion platform, one good news piece is we do have a free community account that anybody can go sign up for so their non-commercial use cases. So this is a great way that you can go set up an account, play around with the system, get it connected to your D5 instance, and be up and running very, very quickly. I know D5 has already put up some great tutorials and walkthroughs on how to set all of that up. And then if you do have a commercial use case where you're working with your own stakeholders, your own customers, we do have both a commercial and a premium tier account. The monthly costs are listed here. We also can do an annual contract if that's something you're interested in doing. And basically the functionality between these different tiers is exactly the same. Just how much data you can store or stream from the Cesium Ion platform is what differs between these different tiers. So if you're working with many, many customers and you need to be able to stream or store lots and lots of data, the commercial and premium tiers provide you higher quotas for what you can stream and store. All of this information can be found up on our website. We'll share these links in the chat here. And you can also see our terms of service up on our website as well. And so with that, I hope that's been a good overview. Please, if you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat here. I'll be sticking around for the entire webinar here and happy to answer questions either in the chat or at the end when we do a live Q&A session. But feel free to go to ion.cesium.com to sign up for an account. If you're interested in learning more about Cesium and the various use cases that our customers have been building on our platform, you can check out our blog at cesium.com/blog. And certainly if you have any questions for me or for my team, you can hit us up at either of these email addresses here. So thank you all very much again for being here. Jeff, thank you for having me. I'll hand it back over to you to jump into the demo.
Great. Thanks, Danny. Let me go ahead and share the presentation. So before we dive into the actual live demo and showcasing Cesium in action inside of D5 Render, I will be talking about why we decided to integrate this feature into D5, from multiple different perspectives, whether it be from the designer or architect's perspective, as well as the client or the firm's perspective. So when it comes to the architects specifically, allowing you to utilize this feature gives you more detailed context, which of course means clearer visions, more informed design decisions, and faster approvals. But it also allows, allowing this precise geospatial data, especially for large and international sites, can be hard or costly to incorporate. So that's why we decided to partner up with Cesium and provide you this feature. And on the client side, clients often aren't trained to read plans or abstract renderings. Dropping the design into a real world environment lets them instantly see the scale, relationship of their surroundings, and potential impacts without you having to explain every single angle or design decision. And on the firm side, it allows them to win more work. When you're competing for projects, showing a proposal and its actual location makes it more tangible and compelling. It's a big differentiator in interviews and RFP proposals, but it also helps with the cost reductions. So traditionally, getting that site context meant hiring GIS specialists or purchasing expensive data sets or hiring drone photographers. And so with the Cesium integration inside of D5, you can get accurate, ready-to-use data instantly without those added costs. And then lastly, scaling workflows. Because this data is already available and formatted to D5, you can scale this approach across multiple different projects and offices without the overhead of constantly having to source this specific site context model for each different project. And so here are just a few more bullet points on the challenges in traditional workflows. So I won't go through each of these individually. You can take a minute to read through these, but what I will say is that traditionally bringing real world context into design has been slow and fragmented. Architects and firms spend days or even weeks manually building 3D site models, constantly having to rework them with every design update. So all this makes it hard to maintain accuracy and contain a single source of truth. So on top of that, managing large data sets slows down computers and disrupts workflows. So altogether, these inefficiencies slow down projects, increase costs, and make it harder to deliver projects clearly. So all those different points were, huge contributors into why we decided to incorporate Cesium into D5 Render. And so now that we have a clear understanding on the context of why this feature is so important, I can go ahead and start to share my screen and walk you through how this actually impacts your workflow. So let me go ahead and get rid of this presentation. So here I have D5 Render pulled up. Sorry, give me just 1 second here. All right, there we go. So here I have D5 Render pulled up. And as you can see, I do have just these two towers here that are actually brought in from my modeling software over to D5 Render. And everything else that you're seeing here is all brought in through Cesium. And one thing I'll draw your attention to is our frames per second up here. So as you can see, it's pretty performant. You know, traditionally, if I were to have modeled and brought in everything into D5 Render or into my modeling software as actual geometry, my computer would burn down. But now, since this is all being streamed, this is all pretty performant. I don't get any bottlenecks in here. Even if I start to zoom out, I can show really the overall scale of all the information that I'm able to stream here inside of D5 Render. And if I go ahead and remove this Cesium import, I can start to talk a little bit more about how do you actually import this into D5. So let's just go ahead and delete this, and then we'll go into terrain, Cesium, and then from here, I can either type in the address or enter the longitude and latitude. So if we go into our browser here, let's see, we can open up Cesium, enter the address, and this will give us the longitude and latitude. So let's just go ahead and copy that into D5 Render. And make sure to enable this Google Photorealistic 3D tiles and hit add. And it won't happen instantaneously. As you'll notice here, it'll start to import everything in batches. So it's starting off very low res, and then it'll go ahead and load in the additional LODs and make this look truly photorealistic. And what's great about this feature is that it's completely reactive to all your environmental settings or changes. So for example, right now you'll notice that it's pretty dark. So I'll just go ahead and change the time of day. We can also enter the longitude and latitude in here so that we can get an accurate sun path or shadow study of our site. So now we can start to see how our site model accurately interacts with our proposed design or vice versa. And one thing that you'll notice here is that if I just go ahead and click on Cesium, I might want to go back and bring back our Chicago skyline in here. You'll notice that we get a little error message here. So that's to be expected. If you do want to swap out the site, all you need to do is just click on the Cesium object and click on these reselect options. So from here, I'll just go ahead and enter the updated coordinates and hit update. And now it'll start the import process all over again. And as mentioned, since this is all reactive to our environmental and preset settings, that means that you can still take advantage of all our different AI features. So for example, if I zoom in to this view here, I can just go ahead and click on AI atmosphere match, take a screenshot, and then upload a reference image. So we'll do this winter scene here, hit generate, and as usual, it'll go ahead and swap out the exterior image environment. As you can see here, it's also started to add some snow into my scene. So all these cesium buildings are reactive to also the weathering effects that we might have inside of D5 Render. So here is the final results, and we can always go ahead and maybe increase that snow strength, manipulate this preset as we see fit, or go ahead and just select from our existing preset library. As you can see here. So, if I were to start from scratch, it would literally be a matter of importing my site model, or sorry, my building model, adding a few textures here and there, importing my Cesium model, and then having to play around with those exterior lighting presets, which we can of course do through the use of AI or through this D5 presets. Now, to actually set up this Cesium capability in the backend, you will need to have a Teams account and set this up. So if we take a look at our browser here, if you just go into d5render.com and copy this URL link, you can take a look at the instructions in order to set this up in the backend. You will need a Cesium ion token that you will then copy and paste into the backend D5 Teams management page. So once that is set up, anybody using D5 Render will be accessing that token to import this geometry inside of D5 Render. And from there, we do have some additional settings inside of Cesium. So if we take a look at this Google photorealistic 3D tile, we'll see that we have maximum screen space. So this is really just a resolution or fidelity setting. So it's a value from 0 to 100, 0 being the best and 100 being the lowest resolution. So if I just go ahead and set this to 100, you'll see that we get this like very clayed style import. And again, that's just to free up resources, really. So that it doesn't take too long to load in the site model. But if I set this to 0, you'll notice that the full 3D model does come in. It'll just take a couple seconds longer to load in. We also have our range limit. So by default, if I start to pan around, you'll see that even though I selected Chicago, I'm literally getting all of Illinois and all of the US in here. So if you wanted to, you can start to add a range limit. This way, we're only importing chunks of the model that we want to. So here, you'll see that I have 200,000 by 20,000. So I now have this long strip. And lastly, here we have these LOD transition settings. And I'll just let Cesium load in for a second, and I can explain to you a little bit more about what this LOD transition parameter means or does. All right, so here we have the Cesium import. And if we start to zoom out far enough, you'll start to notice that we do have various different levels of detail imported in here. So right here, we have the highest level of detail. And then the further back you go, you'll see that these 3D buildings do drop in quality. And that's due to the LODs. So if we just go ahead and turn that on, it'll refresh. And then that transition between that high level LOD and that low level LOD will sort of start to blend in a little bit more seamlessly. So you don't get that hard cutoff between the low level LODs and the high level LODs. So something to keep in mind there. And going back to our original view, another, some additional things I'll start to talk about is how you can start to create more interactive ways of displaying your work through Cesium and D5 Render. So you can, of course, do your still renderings, as you can see here, or you can do your more traditional video renderings. So you still have all the same capabilities, but you're also able to utilize our virtual tours and XR tours to show your work in a more interactive manner. So if we go into tour. Here I've created an XR tour. And what this allows me to do is start to showcase my project in a more interactive manner. So I can use these like guided virtual tours with these hotspots that I'll just click on, and it'll take me to the next vantage point. So I can do that for my exterior views as well. Or I can start to create these XR tours. And as you can see here, this is all hosted via a URL link. So all I need to do is just copy and share that with a client. And now they're able to open this up on their browser and fully navigate the 3D model. And you can now start to add in comments in here and markups. So if I just refresh this, we can start to see just a few little like annotations that I took a second to add in here. So here we'll see just a tag that I added. I'll click on that and I can say something like add new entrance design. So I can really use this as a communication tool or a presentation tool. And lastly, if we are just looking at still renderings, since again, this information is satellite imagery, the further, the closer we get in, the more details we might want to start to add. So if we just go ahead and open up our AI post-processing window, this is where we can start to use some more built-in AI features within D5 Render to just increase the resolution and the fidelity of our still renderings. So one option that we have is to just use the AI enhancer. So this is the after and the before. The change is a bit subtle. So if I just zoom in, you can start to see the changes that it applies. And one great feature about this is that you can always go ahead and enable it, do a selective pass, and just select the Cesium import. We also have our style transfer. So the style transfer will take more creative liberties here. So I selected this spring preset, and this is the result it was able to generate. And I think it really does a great job for like the trees here that we have. It also went ahead and started to play around with the water here in our lake and added a boat. So a lot of interesting details that it was able to capture. We can also showcase this at night through just a simple AI style transfer. And lastly, we also have this smart retouch, which I feel gave me the best results. So if I just enable that, we can take a look at the results. So it really did a good job of just like adding some more realistic looking foliage assets without changing it too much, as well as adding some more details on our buildings facades. So just showcasing some AI post-processing effects that you can do on top of your still renderings. And lastly, while we are really excited about this feature, we'll be the first to admit that there are some, requests that we've gotten that we are working to improve, hopefully by next week or within the near future. So one of those feature requests has been the ability to like carve out different components of the cesium import. So for now, you can go ahead and add a section cube. So I'll just go ahead and enable that. And as you can see, we can start to carve out different elements of our import. The limitation occurs once you start to, let's say you want to carve out a pre-existing building and then add your own building designs on top. So currently it will also affect your model import. But again, this is something that we're aware of and that we're working on resolving. So hopefully within the near future, we will be able to add that update as a hotfix so that you can only carve out specific elements of cesium while still leaving that model import intact. The other limitation here is if we go into display, or sorry, scene, and turn on our parallel projection. We do have some rendering glitches here with the LODs. So again, that's something that we're aware of and that our dev team is actively working on. So, rest assured that those concerns have been heard. And with that, that concludes the live demo portion. I'll just go ahead and share the presentation once again. So based on what we've looked at today, hopefully some of these bullet points have been, highlighted. With D5 Cesium, real-world context comes into your scenes instantly without the need for manual modeling. AI presets optimize the data automatically, creating cinematic, photoreal visuals in seconds. You can adjust seasons, lightings, and climates on the fly. So really making your presentations more compelling and easier for clients to understand. And with some of the collaboration tools that we showcased, it provides a seamless workflow. Designers can leave comments or images directly within the immersive showreel tours. And because Cesium streams real-time cloud-based data sets, teams can work globally without downloading massive files. And to truly take advantage of Cesium, you will need to get access to D5 Render for Teams. And with this Teams here, you do get access to Cesium, but you also get access to a whole host of different capabilities built inside of D5 Teams. So you do get this multi-editor capability. So it allows users to open up the same D5 render project simultaneously. So that same D5 render project can be opened up on multiple machines, and you can all work together to build up your visualization projects. You also get a shared team library. So even though D5 Render gives you 15,000 different assets out of the box, you can now start to develop your own shared library of assets, whether it be 3D models or materials that you can then store and share with different teammates. We also have firm curated visual presets. So you can start to share different environmental presets, scatter presets, so that once one user, spends an hour or two developing a scene or a scatter preset, the next person up doesn't have to spend the same amount of time. They can just borrow that preset and apply it to their projects. So you're not reinventing the wheel each time. Um, and then, of course, as I mentioned, you get the ability to comment, share, and notify different users once an update has been made. So these are just a few highlights of D500 Teams, a whole host of different features built inside of Teams for more collaborative workflows. And lastly, I did just want to share with you guys, just the story of how we came to adopt Cesium inside of D5 Render. So this all started September of 2024, where we engaged with Cesium, had some initial discussions about how we could integrate this into D5 Render. And it wasn't until March of 2025 where we implemented OpenStreetMap data, which is where we heard from other users saying that they would really love to see this feature inside of D5 Render, which brings us to today, where we've gone ahead and fully implemented this feature inside of D5 Render. So as you can see, it's been a pretty short turnaround, which is again a testament to like how active we are with the community and engaging with the community and taking in that feedback and actually creating features and meaningful workflows out of these comments or requests. So with that, please feel free to scan this QR code, and we'll be taking a look at the chat right now for any questions that might come along. So please feel free to ask any questions to myself, the D500 team, and Danny and the Cesium team as well.
Great, Jeff. I've been scanning the questions here. I think maybe we've got one or two we could start to address.
Mm-hmm.
One of them came in about being able to crop out the Google Photorealistic 3D tiles in D5 Render, and I think that's the feature that you showed with the cube that you dropped into the scene, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be the section tool. So it is a limitation on the section tool currently, where you are able to just section out the current layer. But for right now, there is a bug where it doesn't it carves out everything. So we are updating that tool so that you can limit the content or objects that you do want to section out. So yeah, to answer your question, we will be releasing a hot fix soon.
Great. There was another question about the Cesium membership or license for $149 a month. I think the question was asking, could you carry over credits in terms of, from month to month? And that's not the way it's set up. Basically, you get a quota per month in terms of how much data you can stream and store, and then that resets every month. Yeah, that's the way that feature works. See if there are other questions in here.
So in Cesium landscape is not real world. So I have tested this out, and maybe Danny, you can talk a little bit more about this, but I did test out the Google Tiles imports through Cesium. And when I was looking at like mountainous terrain, it was able to capture that pretty well inside of D5. But I believe within like maybe like an urban context, that's where like, maybe like those topography changes a bit more subtle. But I do believe that we are able to capture that landscape information.
Yeah, and there's another question that just popped up about, are there cities in the world that may contain very little data in Cesium? So the thing to be aware of, again, it's all going to depend on which data set you're using from Cesium. So you've referenced several times the Google data. We have a partnership with Google to be able to stream their photorealistic 3D tile data via Cesium. And that data is, sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not so great. And it all just comes from the data that Google has collected and licensed over the years. So generally speaking, the Google photorealistic 3D tile data is very good in large urban environments. It tends to be less detailed when you get out to more rural areas. The one nice thing about it is you can just open up Cesium Ion and open that data set and just kind of fly around and look at it and kind of get a sense for if you've got a particular area that you're interested in, you can just zoom down to that and see what kind of data you get. And then again, we do have other data sets that we provide that have other levels of detail depending on the areas that you're interested in. So I would say it just depends on where you are in the world and what data set you're looking at, but you can kind of go in and dig through all of that information pretty easily.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, just opening up Google Earth, if you're able to find it on Google Earth, I think it's pretty safe to say you can find it inside of that Cesium plugin. One other question here was about whether the data is geospatial data or if it's actually hard-coded geometry. And so that's one of the benefits of this feature, is that it's all being streamed inside of D5. So it's not actually taking too many resources on your machine. If you took a look at the live demo, I was able to stream all of downtown Chicago without a hiccup on my performance. I think I was running off like 60 frames per second on average. So it really is pretty performant. And the great thing about this is that it acts as if it were actual geometry, because it's still able to react to, like the sun position or any like environmental changes that you do. You will still be able to create those like shadow studies, even though it's not actual hard-coded geometry inside of D5 Render.
Yeah, and just to maybe emphasize that a little bit. So the content that is being streamed from Cesium Ion, from the server, is 3D data. It's 3D mesh data. The 3D tiles format just does a really good job of breaking that data up into very manageable bytes. And Jeff, you were talking about the levels of detail as you get out into the distance. So it's handling all of that kind of on the fly, so that as you move around a scene, it'll load the higher fidelity tiles that you might need as you get closer. There was another question in here about if you get closer to the ground, how does it look? So all of that higher fidelity data will page in and out based on where the camera is in the scene. And all of that's handled by the request going back to the Cesium Ion server. There was another question about if you can try this out just to see if it has data before you sign up for an account. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. So again, if you go, I'll drop it's just ion.cesium.com. You can go there, you can sign up for a free account, and then you can go in and bring up the Google Photorealistic 3D tile dataset or any of the other datasets that we provide, and look at them in just in the web browser and kind of zoom down to different areas. So in a very quick, without having to kind of get everything set up, you can just dive into that, zoom into a particular area, see what the fidelity of data looks like, and get an answer to whether or not it's detailed enough for the area that you're looking at.
Right. That's a great point. I see another question about, can you show us the view of the model taken at street level? How do things look when the view is 50 to 75 feet close up? So as Danny mentioned, I think the closer you get, that's where you might notice, a fidelity drop. But, we are hoping to improve the section cut tool so that maybe it is a hybrid approach where you are using that satellite image, spatial data imagery inside of D5 Render, and then maybe you carve out what's nearest to the camera if you are on that street view level, and then that's when you start to add in some like D5 Render assets or some actual model geometry. So it might be a hybrid workflow, but at least this way you're not having to also model, the exterior side context as well.
Yeah. And the one other piece I'll ask, and this might be getting a little too down in the weeds, but if any folks watching have their own data for like a broader city area, that's the other thing you can do on the Cesium side is you can upload that data and have it tiled and then have it streamed in just the exact same way that the Google data is streamed in. So that might be a solution if you have your own data. Maybe you've gone out and captured it yourself, or you have a higher fidelity model that you've created for any reason. You can combine that with the Google data and maybe have Google data for sort of the outskirts of an area, and then as you zoom in, have higher fidelity data, and then have your locally rendered data in D5 on top of that as well. So you can kind of mix and match all of those different techniques depending on what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Another question I see here is about the availability of this feature in D5 Render Pro. So currently this feature is only for teams, but I mean, to be honest, there's been such a huge outcry and passion about this feature from the community. There are internal discussions about Pro, but for right now it is just teams. So until further notice, it is just a teams feature right now. All right, just taking a look through some more comments here. Folks, please feel free to add any questions here in the chat. Not seeing any more comments come through. Oh, can you crop data on Ion? So yeah, you can limit the region inside of D5 Render so that it only imports the data set that you need it to. So yeah, you can definitely control how much of Cesium is being imported inside of D5 Render.
And just in case, you can also do that on the Cesium side, which you might not need to do given what D5 can do in the client application. But if for any reason you wanted to clip a smaller region on the Cesium side, you have that functionality. There's a section in the Cesium Ion interface called Clips, which allows you to go into a data set and clip it down to a smaller area. One important thing to note is that feature is not available on the Google Photorealistic 3D Tiles data set. The licensing terms that we have with Google prevents us from being able to do that, but you can do it on any of the other data sets that Cesium provides.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions coming through, so I think we can wrap it up on that note. And again, I just want to thank you, Danny Williams, for taking the time to meet with us and to share a little bit more about Cesium. We're really excited for users to start testing this out inside of D5 Render. So with that, again, thanks everyone for taking the time to join us on this webinar here today.
Jeff, thank you for the time, and thanks everybody for the questions. And yeah, looking forward to see what people create with this.
Awesome. Thanks everyone.
All right. Take care.